You asked for it, and Papa Red's delivering. Give me the next 30 minutes. I will change how you see Reiner. Make some tea, grab a snack. We are going deep on this one. Real quick, I do recommend you watch my video on Jean first. It's not required viewing, but you'll come to see these two characters are actually very closely related. Disclaimer time. No manga spoilers because I haven't read it, but we spoil the entirety of Attack on Titan's anime events thus far, meaning up to episode 87, The Dawn of Humanity. Many analyses on Reiner deduce that his psychological condition is a response to trauma, which of course is a part of it, but I think it goes much deeper than that. We're not wasting our time on a recap. You know Reiner, I know Reiner, let's do it. Attack on Titan presents us with a rather rude awakening in the realm of mental health. All of us are susceptible to falling insane. Like, we may look at, quote, insane people as entirely separate from ourselves, an unassociated breed to us normal people. Is this a fallacy? Creator of the series Hajime Isayama entertained in an interview, "Is it merely coincidence that I wasn't born as a murderer?" This is similar to what German psychologist Erich Fromm explains. Nothing is more common than the idea that we are eminently sane. We look at others' mental disturbances as strictly individual incidents. Can we be so sure that we are not deceiving ourselves? So, when discussing Reiner, bear in mind we're also talking about a part of ourselves to some degree at least. A dormant part, but an ever-present germ which birthed the same mental pathology we witness in others. You asked for this. So how did Reiner's mind shatter? What produced his mental disorder? It stems from something further back than military trauma. Rather, it started in his early childhood. Reiner has confessed he's committed the sins he has to be a hero. This is only a half-truth. Reiner never much wanted to be a hero, rather he wanted others to see him as one. Note the difference. This is made abundantly clear through the first several episodes of Season 4. Reiner's dream of becoming heroic stems from an emotional scar left by his father's neglect. In 1960, the percentage of children living without a father, at least in the US, was 12%. According to the US Census, that number is now near 33%, almost triple. As we continually lose our fathers, mental health takes a steep decline as well. There is a clear draw between the presence of a father and the potential for children to develop massive mental disorders. There's a reason that we hang on Reiner's daddy issue shit for so long at the start of the season. So for as long as we discuss him, no, we're discussing the mechanics of fatherlessness in society, consequences that each of us feel in one way or another. Reiner's heroism, like many other real children's aspirations, is rooted entirely in his desire to win his father's approval, which as we see, never finds its way to him. And he seeks that same approval out in other people for the rest of his adolescence and early adulthood. It's all about image, his mask. Think of Reiner like a child sitting in the front row of a classroom trying to fit himself neatly into his school teacher's gaze. Not because he wants to learn, but because he seeks his teacher's praise. The two look similar, but are fundamentally different. This urge to appear as admirable stems from what analytical psychologists call the persona. The Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung describes the persona as the mask or image we present to the world, concealing our true nature. When a child misses out on the nurturing of a father, this persona can become parasitic. Reiner's true nature is buried alive underneath the patriotic mask he dons as a child. We'll discuss his true nature shortly, but since the persona, the mask is the outermost layer, let's start there. Now, we all carry a persona. It's the version of you that you show in front of, say, your spouse's parents or your boss. But if one over-identifies with the persona, when they begin to sell the illusion to themselves rather than to others, it becomes self-destructive. Look at how masks are used in popular media, when the persona covers things about us which we cannot face, rather than the public. The ego-persona relationship becomes parasitic, like you see in Phantom of the Opera or John Carpenter's Halloween. It goes from a healthy, psychosocial conduct to dangerous self-deception and repression. Notice Reiner's birthday is August 1st. This was the day in Eastern Rome when Justinian I became sole ruler of the Byzantine Empire. This actually has nothing to do with Reiner's character. Reiner spends his whole life creating a persona for others to be impressed by, and through the lack of paternal guidance in his life, he falls for his own masquerade. He was never shown another route. Dr. James Hollis, an American psychoanalyst, explains, "Sons need to watch their father in the world. They need the activation of their inherent masculinity both by outer modeling and by direct affirmation. In absence of this, Reiner becomes his mask. This masquerade and the trauma that follows cause a rift in Reiner's psyche, a split where, to avoid his true nature, he develops and sells off two new personas." Now, this is something people commonly misunderstand about Reiner. People think Reiner has an alter ego, that he's a Jekyll and Hyde type of character. Not quite. Reiner has two personas, two masks that he switches between according to whatever his environment demands of him. He dons his first mask in his early youth, what we'll call the warrior for now. He adopts what he thinks looks like a strong, masculine persona. However, he never had a father to show him what being a man actually meant. There's a reason Isayama wrote that Reiner wasn't cut out for the warrior program. He wanted to illustrate that Reiner as a warrior is just a hollow persona, not that he's a figure truly capable of serving. Rather than someone like Marcel, who is a noble, caring leader, Reiner just isn't. Had his warrior persona been coming from a genuine place of altruism, he would have never been such a little dickhead, because like Jung said, fanaticism, after all, is merely overcompensated doubt. Reiner's patriotic fanaticism is his first mask, and it does not work. It hasn't evolved into an alternate personality yet, but we're getting there. Reiner's patriotic mask works so poorly, in fact, that he creates a new mask to cover that one. After seeing the damage his persona's done to himself and to others, he's presented with a choice: face his nature or continue to cower behind persona. He chooses the latter, and he adopts a new persona called the Soldier. Terrified of his other persona, this version becomes a lot warmer and more compassionate. It's the big brother mask that all of his comrades revered. However, it's just as fictitious. Notice this quote that I stumbled across from the manga. He specifically says, "I always acted like everyone's big brother." And check out this parallel. His compassion only reaches as far as his own suffering. I'm sure there's still some people that'll make the argument Reiner really was compassionate, citing all the things he's done for his comrades. I strongly disagree. Remember the student in class comparison. Reiner did everything he could to communicate a compassionate persona, when in reality this was just the work of a damaged heart seeking out the approval of his father in other people. Here's some hard evidence to justify that. Notice his attraction to Historia. Reiner saw himself in the fake kindness of the Krista persona. Historia is basically the female version of Reiner, pawning off compassion in pursuit of the approval that her mother never gave her. If Reiner is attracted to feigned compassion, it means that within him is feigned compassion. The proof is in the pudding being Historia. A mask of brutality and a mask of compassion. This is his conflict. The seeds for these personas were planted in his early childhood, cultivated by his father and kind of a pretty shitty, guilt-tripping mother. Later on, trauma was the water which led these seeds to push up through the dirt. The armor he wears. The Austrian doctor Wilhelm Reich said that this persona, this hollow armor, is the, quote, total of typical character attitudes which an individual develops as a blocking against his emotions, resulting in lack of emotional contact, deadness, functionally identical to muscular armor. The armored Titan. Compassionate as Reiner may seem, a warrior as he may seem, these are both just fragile masquerades over an effectively dead body. So what's the point then? Attack on Titan shows us that we have to be cautious of our masks, the identities we take on and feign, lest they rule over us and we become hollow. How much of us can we sell off to our image before there's nothing left underneath? How much can a man seek approval without sacrificing his own manhood? Reiner's issues lay with his father and subsequently his own manhood. An Attack on Titan addresses the crisis of the masculine in a way I've never seen before. Hajime Isayama once said that characters who die don't really feel dead to him. I'm led to believe that sometimes characters are just parts of other characters that haven't been discovered or tapped into yet. What looks like death is just the two merging. Okay, I do recognize it sounds like some schizo shit. I've got evidence, just hear me out. Here's where people who've seen my Jean video need no explanation, but I'll summarize for those who need catching up. We'll look at Jean really quick. Remember how gutless he started? How he was such a coward and basically everything that his friend Marco was not. I believe Marco was just a part of Jean that hadn't been unearthed yet. It's only after Marco, the leader of Squad 19, dies that Jean finally finds his ability to be a leader. Marco in Latin descends from the word male. His last name is a masculine variation of the Old English bota, meaning remedy. So Marco's name literally means male remedy. Emasculated by his mother and his lack of struggle, what finally mended Jean's sense of positive, brave leadership, masculinity, was loss, suffering, willingly undergoing painful initiation, abandoning the past and moving toward the future. Marco was separate from Jean until that half was mended through a painful and selfless night of mourning. Of course, at this point, one could say Jean was just inspired by Marco, but here's where things get interesting. So Reiner had his own Marco. It was Marcel. Marcel and Marco were the same exact character, the same symbol. Notice their names and the similar personalities: brave, righteous, strong, but kind and compassionate. Marcel, leader of the warrior mission, Marco, leader of Squad 19. However, whereas Jean adopts Marco into his personality, Reiner only adopts Marcel into his persona. He just tries to look like him, and as such, it's an unsuccessful integration. We see situations like this in real life, in the macho types of men who only pay mind to their armor, rather than anything within. And just to add, characters dying and mending with each other is a modern storytelling technique. You see it done in Breaking Bad, which Isayama has referred to as a masterpiece and is considered an influence of his. Every time Walter White claims a life, he gains subtle traits and behaviors displayed by his victims. Notice Isayama used the same losing half your face symbol that Breaking Bad used with Marco and Marlo. These characters were halves of others, but I'll discuss Marlo in a future video. Does this seem like a stretch? In a series literally about people dying and passing parts of them on to others, no, it's really not that far off. It seems pretty on the nose, actually. Marco halved, Jean whole. Marlo halved, another whole. Marcel devoured whole, Reiner halved. This is going to feel like a bit of a tangent, but it all ties back to Reiner, I promise. Marco, Marcel, Marlo. Compare the selfish brutality of Marley with Maria, the wall protecting the interior. These are all references to the Roman god Mars. Often looked at as a symbol of masculinity, Mars is the god of war, but also a cultivator of agriculture, life. Mars has the capacity to bring destruction, but at the exact same time, he nurtures. He's wild, yet tamed all at once. An effective model, if not the only true model of masculinity, despite the images of man our culture sells us in music and movies. This symbol here that you already know, it's the symbol of Mars. It's his shield and arrow. A man in armor is the effective image of manhood. Someone without armor on the battlefield of life is useless, too soft and delicate for the harsh environment, but the armor is rendered pointless without anything soft underneath worth defense. This is what Attack on Titan illustrates with Marco, Marcel, Marlo, the dichotomy of Marley and Maria. A man needs armor, and he needs delicacy. Jean did it the night he mourned Marco. Reiner miserably failed. Like Robert Bly said, man knows the images of the tough man, which he received in high school, do not work in life. It is in the old myths that we hear of that positive leadership energy in men. We learn how essential it is to leave our parental expectations entirely. In Mars, we see positive leadership. Marco, Marcel, and Marlo, the ones who go against the grain and remain positive leaders, certainly fit the bill. There's a reason I included this bit in Bly's quote. Whereas Jean moves past the safety offered by his overbearing mother, Reiner maintains his childish desire to be accepted and seen as a hero by his father. and it results in Maria being breached, the armor breaking. As such, in death, Marcel just becomes a Michael Myers mask who blinds Reiner, rather than a leading aura which guides him. On top of all this, notice it's Reiner who indirectly causes Marco and Marcel's deaths. The persona, the empty suit of armor, is the death of men. This is the case in real life. Men so focused on image, they sacrifice their manhood on the altar of social acceptance. Attack on Titan shows us that being a man goes far beyond others' expectations. Like Joseph Campbell says, if the path before you is clear, you're probably on someone else's. Or like the female version of Reiner says, let's go a little bit deeper before we pull back from Schizoland. Boys like Jean and Reiner pursuing manhood are reflected in the story of the Egyptian demon Ammit. After weighing your heart on a scale, the demon either completes you or devours you. If you're unworthy, uninitiated, images of manhood will deceive you and turn you into a monster. Did this guy even watch Mad Men? If one is worthy, they become a hero capable of protecting the ones they love. And that readiness comes from nothing but compassion. That thing Jean had that Reiner didn't. A lightness of the heart on Ammit's scale, a genuine willingness to undergo pain. That's what the word compassion means, suffer with. The psyche of man possesses something called the anima. It's the warm, nurturing, compassionate, intuitive part of man. It's all of man's deeper feeling. A component as essential to manhood as his own masculinity itself is. James Hollis described someone like Reiner as one who, quote, hides himself in macho pride and enforced loneliness. Reiner can't let himself feel those deeper feelings, that guilt and that shame. Like the ancient study of alchemy depicts, a man must balance his anima and his masculine, his warmth and his cold. Imbalance will cause an explosive reaction like we see in Reiner, a split. A balanced internal space is needed. The warmth of compassion must balance the cold of the fearful armor. But, as James Hollis continues, men's fear alienates them from their own anima, the principle of relatedness, feeling, and connection to the life force. Reiner is one of our most fearful characters. In this fear of what lies within, fear of what lies behind the mask, the only answer is willingly facing it. Because, like Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Jean does it the night he mourns Marco. Reiner never does so, sold out on looking like a hero. Reiner hides from blame, guilt, and shame behind his masks, his personas. I'm sure you, as a viewer, have experienced people like this in real life. Thus, Attack on Titan asks an important question. What role do our masks play? Do we hide behind them, running from things that we're meant to face? Okay, we're this far down the rabbit hole, I want to pull back so we're not just throwing all this academic shit around. I'm going to summarize it simply before moving on. Marcel and Marco are the same character, symbols of other characters' potential strength and leadership, masculinity. When they die, they don't really die, they're just integrated into corresponding characters. For Jean, it's successful, for Reiner, it fails. This is because while Jean honestly sought strength for something beyond him, Reiner sought the image of strength, and he did to mask his own attachment disorder. He's all rigid exterior, armor, lacking the compassionate center that men require. And this schism, this great split, develops into a personality disorder. Jean is a boy entering manhood, Reiner is a boy stuck in adolescence. One more time in a way even the Attack on Titan fanbase will understand. Reiner makes a headcanon where he's a Chad like Marcel. Jean was based enough to become like Marco, but Reiner was coping and seething over his dad too much to become Marcel. So he writes another chapter in his headcanon and becomes even more cringe. Eventually, he huffs enough of this copium to the point his own psyche cucks him. Alright, we know what the problem is now. The question is then, does Attack on Titan offer a solution?
Found her Emir. Dap me up.
Don't be foolish, Eren. She only daps up descendants of royal blood. Earlier, I mentioned the true Reiner, the ego caught between two oscillating personas. This true Reiner, the one under the mask, is finally revealed in Season 4. He's just the scared kid that we see crumpled on the ground. Sequentially, this is the last time we see the true Reiner, right before his split starts. He goes years without this kid rising back up to the surface. Notice the parallel here? Trembling in front of Eren, we finally see both his personas melt away. Reiner is scared. He always has been. Years of guilt and repressed emotions come boiling up in Eren's presence, triggered by the part of himself he sees in Eren. Eren is just a mirror in this scene. Reiner has no choice but to finally face himself in this basement, just like our other characters faced their own ignorance in a basement across the sea. Like Jung said, whoever looks into the mirror risks a confrontation with himself. The mirror shows the face we never show to the world because we cover it with the persona, the mask of the actor. Through Eren, Reiner is finally faced with the consequences of his personas. Shortly after this scene, there's a flashback to their cadet days where Eren collapses into a similar position as Reiner, admitting he wants to be more like him. Reiner literally sees himself here, as Eren just wants to be more like Reiner. Reiner just wants to be more like Marcel. I mean, they actually flash an image of it in this episode. You cannot get more on the nose with this shit. Oh wait, they do.
Reiner, お前と同じだよ.
Reiner experiences a confrontation with his shadow, the parts of himself he rejects and buries beneath his fractured ego. Because, like the French writer Luc du Clapier says, we recognize in others what we hide from ourselves. This night justifies that it wasn't necessarily trauma that split Reiner. He continues to see some real bad shit after this, but his personas aren't so there anymore. The remedy, then, that Isayama suggests seems to have been honest, harsh self-reflection, being faced with what his masks had been covering all those years. And now, with a mended personality, Reiner can begin towards wholeness. This doesn't mean Reiner's out of the woods yet. He's got a while to go. The multiple personalities, they have kind of been dealt with, but the original wound his father left is still bleeding. We see this resurface in his suicide storyline. Everything he's ever known has been ripped away from him, and the weight of his true nature is just too much to carry. Death may seem like an effective remedy in a situation like this, even to those in real life. Yet, this is not his end. How is Reiner's wound tended to then, after so many years of useless treatments from the persona? Wholeness can only happen to you when you walk on a path which leads you to a higher understanding. You might be led to that goal by an act of grace, or through a personal and honest contact with others. Reiner's road of trials towards wholeness begins the day he almost commits suicide. Disillusioned, disintegrated, left without his personas, Reiner is finally back at square one. He's back to being the same scared kid that we saw in the beginning of Season 4. As disheartening as Square One is, it is also an environment for rebirth, starting again. Reiner almost pulls the trigger, but is finally given a chance to find what he'd been lacking all those years. Genuine compassion.
そうだ。俺にはまだあいつらが.
He decides to live for something other than himself. It is only then that his softer side, his anima, transitions from trembling weakness to producing warmth. Reiner knows the way forward the moment the musket leaves his mouth. Notice this coming of age came during an attempted suicide, a self-death. In this scene, a trigger really is pulled. We were momentarily led to believe he killed himself. This wasn't just subversion of expectation from the episode director. Reiner does kill a part of himself, and paradoxically, he moves toward oneness. He moves away from the idea of Marcel, and instead becomes Reiner. Marcel dies during this scene, and Reiner emerges. No different than Eren or Armin's sacrificial rebirth in earlier seasons. Death is the great equalizer. It puts into perspective everything which is important and what is not. And in the face of death, Reiner must atone for his sins. Face them, rather than mask them. Reiner isn't free. There are still prison bars cast across his face. But after years of darkness cast by his personas, he finally breathes the light of compassion. His two halves mend. It's subtle. You may not be given the impression a transformation has occurred, but it most certainly has. This was Reiner's atonement, or at least the beginning of it. He exists as a solemn reminder that nothing external can compensate for what is lacking internally. So what's one to do when they finally pick up compassion after years of feigning it? A popular ritual towards wholeness in Western civilization is the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and atoning with those you've wronged is an essential step. You can tell that this is a genuine, compassionate search for reconciliation because it's not forgiveness he's after. He doesn't give a damn what these people think of him. He does not want an "it's okay." He wants to be punished. He wants to be judged. Like in this scene, Reiner is pushing Jean. He takes his lashings like a man and can continue further down the path. Look at Reiner's limp figure the morning after his beating. Although probably just emotional fatigue, could this also be an expression of relief? Of release after years of pent-up guilt?
それでいい。
Something to note, this is what that whole side story about the man who hung himself covered. Remember that? Bertold says it best.
あのおじさんはきっと誰かに裁いて欲しかったんじゃないかな。
Reiner's atonement didn't weigh on forgiveness, it weighed on judgment. He wanted to face the music. And this is reflected in our waking world. Are we sorry because we want to maintain the image we have of ourselves? Or do we genuinely regret our transgressions? It's tricky. I'm not a manga reader, but I sent this script to a friend of mine, and he did confirm that in one way or another, Reiner continues with a series of apologies as the story continues, which makes sense, as atonement is not in a moment, but it's a road traveled. My friend didn't mention to whom he apologizes, but I have my guesses. All those years, all those transformations, every punch thrown, Reiner did so with the feigned bravery of a child seeking approval. It's funny that in moving away from the image he so desperately clung to, he finally became a hero. I guess that would have to be Attack on Titan's point then. Things have to be sacrificed to be obtained. I talked about it in the video covering freedom. It's the origin of the Christ allegory, the rebirthing myth. I really like how the dub interpreted this. They say, if you can't let it go, it's not worth holding on to. Reiner becomes the man he always wanted the day he stops trying to be the man he always wanted. Throughout history, the backbone, the modus operandi of all great spiritual and religious practice has been killing the king, slaying your father and establishing your own domain. Like even Jesus cries out on the cross, "Father, why have thou forsaken me?" Luke Skywalker must conquer his father. Cronus overthrows his father and rules his domain until Zeus does the same to him. This overthrowing happens in Shakespeare, in other bodies of mythology, and even in modern format with Game of Thrones, Gladiator, Guardians of the Galaxy, and so on. However, Attack on Titan puts a spin on this archetype. It shows us that this upheaval doesn't always happen in a climactic moment of conflict. Often in real life, especially in the case of physically absent fathers, sons conduct their upheaval slowly over the course of their lives. And like Freud once said, a hero is a man who stands up manfully against his father, and in the end victoriously overcomes him. Becoming a hero, as Reiner illustrates, doesn't occur in the pursuit of image or in the approval of others, but it is rather pursued through finding a center beyond the father, beyond the images of man one is fed in childhood and early adulthood. This is highlighted perfectly in the exchange between Grisha and Kruger. In facing the darkest facilities of mankind and all the sin which comes with it, the only rational answer is compassion. The only glowing exit sign from the shadow of man hangs over a lightness of the heart, moving away from the persona, the ego, and more towards the center, the anima. Like Kruger says, it's all useless without it. Without that center, one will fall to the same illusions as their fathers did before them, and the cycle will continue. Finding that inner nucleus, asking, can I be more, is what birthed civilization in the first place. And this evolution very well involves atoning for the sins that self-image pushed them into, despite what the world demands of them. Both Marley and the real world want sanitized men. They want Arby's managers and marketing analysts, not heroic men capable of moving against the grain. So it is up to the young boy to initiate himself through destroying his own father's gaze, for his father is a reflection of that failed culture. They even say it in the Bible, of all places, quote, "Surely our fathers have inherited lies." Reiner becomes proof that when a child is left without a strong father, they are instead led by cultural fathers, and most often these substitute men are just as lost as the children they're guiding. It's a vicious cycle. With the barrel of a gun in his mouth, Reiner has this epiphany, and he kills the part of himself his father's absence built. From this moment on, fuck respect or approval. Reiner has something to live for. As he continues down this path of retribution, there finally materializes a warm body under the suit of armor. This is the part of the video where being an anime only sucks. I was actually going to read the manga for this, but you guys voted against it, so here are my guesses for where Reiner's heading. Also, you guys like my little caricature here? I'm a PNG tuber now. Reiner's path to atonement has already started, so I don't think Isayama is going to end Reiner with tragedy. If he was going to be tragic, I think he would have just killed him in the basement. If Reiner wants to go full circle, I'm imagining he pulls a Marcel, and he willingly throws himself into imminent danger. That would reinforce that theme of rebirth Armin talks about. So my chips say he throws himself into harm's way, like he leaps in front of Eren or someone helping him, and saves someone or something in the process. And like when Kenny forfeited his dream, I think he'll die in the process, only tasting true liberation for the final seconds of his life. I'm saying this out loud now, and it does feel like a little predictable to me. How poetic would it be if the character who spent like the last 5 years trying to die was one of the few characters who actually lived? Maybe Reiner pulls the Marcel, almost dies, but lives to appreciate the journey he's undergone like Marcel never did. I guess us filthy anime-onlys are going to have to wait and see. Did I change how you see Reiner? Let me know in the comments below. I'll be replying to as many as I can. I'm going to end this video, of course, with a quote from Robert Bly. Male initiation does not move toward machoism. On the contrary, it moves toward achieving a cultivated heart before we die.
そうだ。俺にはまだあいつらが